Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Mars, our Jupiter day. Mars is 18 degrees Libra, ruled by Venus 11 degrees Leo, and Sun that is 11 degrees Virgo. Mercury moved to the 3rd degree in Virgo. We're just fractions before an eclipse, a total lunar eclipse. It's going to affect the people, but also the emotional state. And the moon is going to be in Pisces, so it's going to be affecting a lot of Pisces folks, Pisces placements. So there's a lot of Pisces information coming up. Continuing on my previous video, I was talking about wealth redistribution versus self-love, which can be the square between Taurus, that is embodiment, sensual, but also self-love, and Aquarius, that is about the having the bucket of the water that nourishes all the cups. And what happened when the person holding the bucket of the water that nourishes all the cups have been ritually abused? Their water began to be poisoned. And then they tried to Robin Hood, which is the last decan of Aquarius, and that is to take from those who have to those who don't have. Now, when it comes to certain skills or traits or self-love, it is challenging. There is a tension between the very fair desire that people will all have the ability and the access to self-love. What can happen when a person who is holding the bucket is ritually abused is that the water that they have to give or to wealth redistribute is not loving. And if that happened as a child, then they have that towards children, all the while they want to purify the water, which is actually Scorpio. Scorpio is transmuting. Unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, Scorpio rules transmutation and also sexuality. And here we get at the attempt to take the life energy of children, unfortunately, by trying to access the child sexually, and then that transmutes the water of the child into unclear water, and when they come to the Aquarius part, they will have poisonous water to give to everyone. And the purgatory happens at Scorpio, which can create a lot of challenges around experiencing sex. And the Taurus is the aspiration to, or the need to. Taurus is the embodied part, the sensual part. So there can be challenges around accessing that. And in the collective, there are many degrees of people who are ritually abused, and some people were more loved as children, or they had more lack of awareness and peace as children, and that innocence or peace, or that projected innocence or peace, was taken away. But it was not necessarily only taken away by direct, sex offenses, but by the astral, by weird rituals, the occult rituals. And it was taken away by people whose childhood has been taken away. So it's a collective that tries to re-access the innocence without sacrificing it within trajectories of secret societies where they attack the innocent to try to offer that, or that they do desire to be innocent, yet they don't want to be attacked like the ones that they're attacking. Very simply put, both the people who are child sex offenders are and were and the people that were victims of that are on the journey of recovery. So for some people, um, they, um, how should I say that? They never really participated in sex because certain things would come up. And some people even internalized, or they wanted to access the child, their own innocence, which could give them an erotic little space, fantasies through which they would access their inner child when they were, I don't know, in self-pleasure. But there was attempt to violate that inner child space by people that were genuinely sex offenders against children. In other people, it may have expressed itself as um, wanting to be in control, so not wanting to be in the position that I previously mentioned, whether consciously or not, and having erotic fantasies around children, or even masturbating about that. But children are psychic, and sometimes it did went all the way to dark occult rituals. So all of that in the collective, which of course stirs up tremendous shame. And now for the people that are recovering, they may have, because of the tremendous shame around these topics and because of how triggering that is, there are almost, phases of recovery that are almost being unlocked. Okay? Instead of MK Ultra gates, gates of recovery. And that's a non-linear process, which doesn't make it any easier when people are trying to regain self-trust. And some people went all the way to regaining self-trust. And some of these processes are really intimate. Um, Sometimes it's about learning a love or a hug that is not sexual. For example, when I would try to hug even my moon talisman, then sometimes I would need to deal with attempts to sexually assault me because of desires that I would go into the child state that seeks the erotic experience to access their innocence, which is also accessed by a hug. Now imagine some of these people who are trying to access the erotic innocence of another child being in the healthcare professions. Okay, psychology, psychiatry. Okay, and it would and of course it happens because they were attacked and they thought that they can deal with something, or they were positioned to do something else, and the levels of consciousness, because these people have all kinds of trajectories within their own psyche, particularly in countries, like Israel or United States or even Netherlands, okay, where some rings, where it was Epstein, where it was the True, where it was Diddler, okay? And so for some people, that has correlation with having and owning an estate or being a real estate person, because they would have to do those rituals for the financiers. Wealth consolidation between wealth families happened through satanic ritual abuse of children that would later be sent as to appease the erotic desires of another wealthy person, which would only work if that person was violated themselves. because like people that grew up in a happy setting, sexually healthy, they look at the child and they don't have that discomfort. They feel natural joy. Now, some people that have are on the journey of healing from ritual abuse, then they did have that discomfort, and then as they heal, they don't have that discomfort, and so there are attempts to, I'm sorry, sexually assault them so that they will go back to that discomfort. And people, and I'm not talking about erotic attraction, I'm talking about discomfort from, hey, there is a being called the child self, and a person never got to be that being fully, even though in one picture people project on them that, but in another not, because the child was already psychically attacked, and that affected the child experience in the world, which was on purpose so that the child will, I'm sorry, be more attractive to predators who think that the child would play a certain game with them, because within that child being, within the child, there was another being that was either a handler or, okay, and that could have been since childhood. And then as the child begins to recover, there are forces to try to keep that child in that non-recovered state, to try to traffic them and try to consolidate wealth in those ways, and put them in, okay, unstable trauma situations and so on. Even the psychiatric treatment that is given to most people is meant to preserve them in trauma. Even so, I heard, from my thesis, I saw psychiatrists themselves, and I was also targeting individuals, so I was also meeting them on an interface of, okay, just like, hey, could they offer help, or what's going on? And I saw them complaining about the revolving door in the mental health hospital, and they said, oh, if only the person would continue to take the pills. But it's like, no, look at the side effects of the pills. Some of them would say, hey, that's not from the side effects of the pills, that's from the trauma. It's like, hey, if the pills side effects look so much like the trauma that you can't tell the difference, what do these pills do? And even for the healthcare professionals, first of all, the calling to be a healthcare professional, the most naive way, is coming from somewhere. Okay, one doesn't wake up and say, oh, let's take a look at all the psychiatric anomalies that people can experience, and be in a closed place, and treat that. Okay, there's a certain calling when people tend to things, um, but also, not also because of that, um, and also not because of that, what those professions entail are abundance of philosophical questions that have practical implications. This is why I got to psychiatry and I learned about spirit and matter. Okay, the body-mind question. It's like, okay, so you look at near-death experiences, you look at psychosomatic medicine, you look at placebos, and the science behind why do people enjoy the effects of a placebo when they know it's a placebo. So how does consciousness play a part in that? ESP and the use of psychic qualities in China, Russia, and United States. There's all these things, and psychiatry is one of them. And that confronts people with shitload. Did you know that having access to assisted death normally does not result in assisted death? It's very challenging for people that How do you keep people from unaliving themselves? Make it accessible for them to have assisted death. And deal with what you need to change in society so that they can choose life. Because they choose life, but but does the world accommodate for that choice? And we're talking about the financiers and the secret societies and the treason cults and the weird dark rituals in children. It has an effect on on the wealth redistribution of the world. And it's not about abusing that child, but it's something that might not even, it's not about done on purpose or not on purpose. Like the deacon of Aquarius that would try to get wealth redistribution, they would just like whatever they have in their bucket of water, they spill the water. And this is why they can look like very moody and very unstable people, even though it's an air sign, because like that's what's in the bucket right now. And then they just water for you, water for you, water for you, water for you. Dude, you're spreading poison. Uh, I'm just, you know, and that was like that's the person, and not only that, they will tell you, hey, have a cup of water, because that's their natural trajectory. It's like, but that water is poisoned. Uh, that's the water I took from that. That's what was in the water. Now, when they also do those rituals in children, because that's the deacon of Aquarius, that we have a lot of professional success sometimes because the Denabalga, the deacon of Aquarius, and now we had a lot of fortune there. So that's the deacon of Aquarius that we have a lot of success sometimes because their job is kind of like a Robin Hood to go to the upper echelons, or sometimes they're born in the upper echelons, and redistribute the water. But what happens if the water of the elite is poisoned? And this is where I go to the thinning of the veil. Okay? Because let's say a person all their life, let's say, okay, I'm going to try and solve the problems of the people that have money so I can use that money to solve the problems of the people that don't have money. And then I will cut myself dividends and I will have a business. Okay, I'll cut the dividends from the rich and then I can subsidize for the poor. And then I have a healthy business that runs on wealth redistribution. All in all, fantastic idea. What if the problems of the rich is hiding the things that they did to the poor? Or getting away with the things that they did to the children? Okay? Now, what would be an ethical form of interference is like, hey, how about changing the trajectory and healing the way that we make wealth? Changing, not doing those rituals, spreading sovereignty around rather than, okay, a violation of that sovereignty. And as basically meaning, oh, by the way, that's also healing pedophilia. And people like, nobody, but this is, people are born with that. People thought that people are born with schizoaffective and schizophrenia disorders. No, they're not. Give any person a housing first, listen to them. They say, oh, but the Mossad is surveilling the entire earth. But they're listening to yeah, they're psychic spies. They train the people. And I happen to have an essay about developmental ESP. Oh, the classified CIA stuff you could find on Google Scholar. Now there's probably even more information out there. Oh, but if putting something in my food or putting energy in my food, well, perhaps there are psychic spies that try to coerce the food through another person. It goes all to that. But this is crazy. Of course, this is crazy. The fact that that person doesn't have a house where they can grow their food, and the fact that you every time you try to listen to them you say that this is crazy, that's also crazy. because you deprive them of recovery and then say that this is something you're born with. It's hereditary. Oh, there are people who are reptilians, don't have a soul, and they can't create. There are people who are cloned, sometimes not cloned, and go through satanic ritual abuse, and so that they would try to steal from humanity and enslave it rather than express themselves authentically and create. Now, those people have authentic souls, creative self, birthright. They have a birthright, okay? If you have a child on IVF, it has a birthright. If you clone someone, they have a birthright. And and we can't ignore that fact, okay? Because it's like we can't ignore that fact. Um, so the thinning of the veil is the people that had a need to encounter certain parts in society that were not the parts they were born into, begin to encounter, and the people that, let's say, were celebrities, elite, and so on, begin to need to have an Instagram account to reach followers, to market their videos, and begin to encounter the common people without the the veil that was both isolating them and supposed to be protecting them, was also isolating them. And this is how content creators are exposed to the reality of, trafficking cults and wealth consolidation. And this is also why people begin to believe the people that talked about satanic ritual abuse more, because they experienced that. And it's like, hey, the only thing that explains that is that. Okay, so that might not be as terrible as that one had it. And then they rethink about their childhood, and then they rethink about, okay, all kinds of things. And when they bring the spirit and matter facets into the mix, then a lot of worldviews change. So this thinning of the veil can be a situation where one would have what seems to be like a safe childhood. You notice there's this trend with I think it's Gen X, okay, the Pluto Capricorns, that is like, I got you got money, I got soul. Okay, never make that. Okay. Um, and so the people that have the money run into the people that are in contact with their soul, and not even aware of that. Um, and that is, now, first of all, there can be genuine and true erotic rapport and attraction, and even certain people, because they understand intuitively, okay, what was previously considered narcissistic, the more they learn about these treason cults, like, hey, that person, let's say they're in a high security position or in a political position or pure security, like, hey, that person is being unclear because they try to protect themselves. And they try to protect also the astrals, and they don't know who is the other energy they're interacting with, so they have this weird interaction that people call narcissistic. And then people learn to stand in their own energy, and the more they understand about those other worlds, the more they also have this awareness and self-love. It's like, oh, okay, I get it, and discernment. But then those other folks are confronted with the living, breathing results of, like, hey, why don't you, think about, I have Israel, half Dutch, then do political assassination prevention. One of the leaders is talking about, hey, people need to at least speak the language, and I'm like, I hear that. to speak the language. Like, what are the challenges? Well, when I was 12, there was a Dutch smuggler that was thinking that my mother would traffic me, because my mother had to give up her passport, her Dutch passport, when she divorced. She couldn't hold a double passport, and then for me, she wanted me to have, and my father had me have a Dutch passport as well. So the thought was maybe we would live in Netherlands, but then through the rights of the child, also the parent can arrive and so on. Now the parent speaks Dutch, and the child would have all these weird emotional experiences that are to do with more things and more things and more things and more, just like, oh, the living, breathing results of, like, and sometimes there are policies. It's like, oh, you know, why are you not in Netherlands? Because they didn't have housing. Oh. That was because of our policies. that that was because of our policies. Yes. Never mind. Next question. Next question, please. And so they can talk. They can do that. They can have their channels. Whatever they do, it is like just don't talk about the children. Oh, but they got to that through tending to satanic ritual abuse and trying to recover from something in their childhood that they don't quite know what. Now, the person from the communist side of the veil, they have no idea. They have no idea that these people up there know them. And that can create a juxtaposition of familiarity, intuition. Oh, they're just protecting themselves in their, security position. Um, but also the living manifestations and implications of the hidden actions begin to be very evident. Why is this child's rooms messy? The child is 40 years old. Why do they act like a child? Oh, they're reconnecting with their inner child. That is not normal. Oh, okay, the children. Okay, no, okay, fine, fine. Never mind, never mind, never mind. So, um, and so this is where um, and this is the Neptune Saturn, okay? The veil is thinning, but also there are new boundaries created that facilitate encounters, and it's kind of like meeting people, this is also the age of colonialism, so people think about the first people who came to meet the Inuit. Why do they have these weird glasses that look like they're coming from space? They look like reptilian glasses because of the snow. They would need the glasses that block most of the sunlight. It has implications, good and bad, but it's like it's coming from necessity. Okay, the people are like, how does a British person eat a banana versus how does an indigenous person eat a banana? It's like, I take the banana, I take out, okay, I peel the banana, I eat the banana. Okay, but another person using the knife and fork and trying to be okay civil with all. It was like how the civil way to eat a banana. I was like, you eat the banana. And so and then when it comes to more intimate things, then a lot of stuff are being exposed, because kind of like people, you think about the way that certain people that grew up in places where they were used to have embodied sensuality, and that is projected upon as if they are this barbaric people that are not civilized, and because they only ran into sexuality in the context of abusing children, ritual abuse, ritual rape, and calling people a whore when they have sex with them, and being called a whore when somebody has raped them, basically. Um, from that to embodied sensuality, and think about it as a crystal ball that drops and it hits cement. It crashes. Now that crystal ball was the attempt to understand the psyche of that which is far away. This is the Saturn Neptune. The veil is lifting. Think about it. I grew up, when I was a child, I grew up on black music, and the song Satisfy You by Puff Daddy and R. Kelly was one of the songs that were like, oh, finally a song about a healthy love and healthy sexuality. I don't even want to know what happened with Another Level. So it's like, hey, all these songs about heartbreaks and pimps and whores, and it's like, oh, finally sexuality. Okay. In retrospective, now think about the children that did meet the diddler. They were expecting to satisfy you. I grew up with the notion of the European gentleman. The people say, hey, Europeans might not have as frequent sex, but they take. Or even as Dutch, this is the country where you can be who you are, and then being for twain, for twain. And they don't even have Dutch names. um, that was assassinated because he's gay, but it's Netherlands. He's gay, and he's Catholic and stuff, but he's gay. Like, why would anybody murder, like, if with a gay person in Netherlands by a Dutch person because he was gay? No, because he was resisting Islam and so on. So he was resisting Islam because he was gay. You can't be gay in Islam. You can underneath, it's like the Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhoods of Satan, and so with the thinning of the veil, there's like, oh my God, like what happened to what happened to my country? Israel being Epstein land. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, there are pedos everywhere. There are pedos in Europe with their privacy. United States, #1 human trafficking. I mean, of course there are pedos here, like, but all around the world is terrible. Um, the financiers in Epstein and Mossad is a compact, but it happens in the U.S. as well. Yeah, that's true with the CIA and the Mossad. but this MK Ultra is like, I don't know who taught who. So the veil is thinning, and from the other side, the veil is thinning as well. It's like, oh, that they're being sexual. They're probably a barbaric whore where they have this ignorance that this is that they should put leaves on their boobs or something. They're like, no, they actually worked for aeons to re-embody their sensual safety, and you're kind of disturbing that. And it's like, you're welcome if you respect boundaries, and then there's another veil thing. It was like, oh, these people are losers. They don't even steal energy from children. Voodoo lover boy. Uh, that's not how we see losers. And yet, just as with any, why do people have usually more erotic attractions when they travel? Because there is something about, first of all, biodiversity, but there's something about something that's not biodiversity. We don't even, the fuck, we know what's in our DNA, right? But what is also happening is that there are interesting polarities, and those polarities have quite dark aspects to them, and the transmutation is happening through curiosity. So while one side wants to um, regress the child self into a place where they've already either been or been somewhere near that, and they're not, or they've been in the residues of that and they're not really going there, because once you embody Taurus, you're just like, you don't go back. Okay, there are certain things that, you know, once you love yourself and are loved, it's not something that you would crave the other, think about it. If a person could be craving chocolate, craving coffee, craving this, then they have actually nourishing food. I never had a caribou, okay, or okay, but let's say they have I don't know, a caribou, and it's like, that taste, that doesn't really have a taste. That's oh, that's like rubber, that's like this, that's like that, and it's like there's something in it, I can't explain it. I just feel better, okay, and then they don't go back to that type of chocolate or that type of, and then there are the attempts to deprive them so much so that they will go back. But this is an artificial creation of a timeline that's being scattered. Again, attempts to sexually assault me when I say that. And so what is created is the situation where it's kind of like, hey, come. It's like, hey, come to the light. And sometimes it can be of two sides because it becomes more and more equal. For example, when I was thinking, oh, I thought I need a lot of sweets before my moon days, and then I bought this cocoa maca. That came from somebody that their energy was coming, okay, from a place of they had the money, and they were informed of, like, they were like, that thing, and I was trying that thing. I was like, oh my god, with the coconut oil. I'm like, oh my god, that's actual nourish, that's superfood. It costed a lot of money, but if I would buy just sweets with that, I could spend that money and more. It would not be answering what I need in that chocolate. Whereas for the other people, they could have those practices that they try to get at the essence of somebody's energy, and they're like, no, that's not. Okay. No, okay, and so it becomes more and more, um, you know, when I think about the time where I had a friend that was what people would call old money, but I didn't know it. They were holding me and hugging me, and they were like a child that needed to be the center of attention, but because they were connected with their child self. And for a while, I was that adult in their life, and then I began to connect to my child self. So they understood with the certain things that when I did not have money to, like, meet with people in a cafe, they had no problem meeting me over a cup of tea, or meeting me in a home cooked meal setting, or just sitting and finding because they were old money. They had no problem to do that. And it was when I was reconnecting with my child self at about that time, they basically got married and had a family. And then I was reconnecting with my child self, so I became more aware of, it was kind of like the Me Too, and then they became more aware of that. It's like, hey, that could happen to them with their instructor, or and so that became more of an equal footing, that one brings certain value and the other person also brought certain value to the table. But it's also when the veil is lifting, there is an awareness. So the people that have money sometimes have it because they have to do things. Okay, there's not really sacred, so to speak. And that creates a complex, um, and and there are things that one would need to know how to get around in certain societies. And yet the desire to have connection, okay, a cross-class connection, which is a part of colonialism. Okay, it's a part of the timeline of colonialism, the thinning of the veil, and the desire to have a connection requires changing the wealth, and there are also generations that are actively doing that, or the desire to do that. Sometimes not, sometimes yes. Yes, it's like the people of all echelons are people. Okay, um, and what is happening is that people begin to become aware that even when it comes to wealth redistribution, it's not as simple as it seems, because a lot of the people that hold the wealth will probably own a tent in the woods if they had to own only the ethically sourced wealth, and probably not even that. And those changes are tremendous. Okay, it's kind of like, hey, the people traveling around and meeting the folks, and they're like, oh, that's the person that what they did in their life is the reason that you don't have housing, or the reason that your work, the work looks more like slavery than work, or the reason that okay. And with that, there are just people learning from people, and and at the same time, people do change. I just heard a sermon of Mormon church on YouTube asking people from the community. I don't know. I listened to the girl that left the Mormon church, so he was next on the algorithm, and he was asking young people that go on their mission, which means they travel to kind of spread the news, why they come back and they're not Mormon anymore. And people one by one told them, "I had a glass of wine in Canada," or okay, like that the ex-Mormon girl, they've been through a shit ton of things, including but not limited to trafficking. They don't talk about it all, okay, psychic attacks and so on. But but the bridging of that with other people, the first memorable thing is the lady that says, "I trade eternal life for coffee." And so a person like me that spent a lot of time, for whom in university I did not have money to buy food, so I would buy a cappuccino that would be keeping me a bit not tired, and the milk would somehow, even almond milk will somehow um, keep me somehow satiated, ignoring the hunger, which creates even more hunger. That created actually, for a while I had binge eating after that. After I actually tried a diet to nourish myself, and there was no way, like, and so, and then only when I was trying that, diet of actually healthy food, I was like, oh, I actually don't have money for food. It's like I knew it in the back of the mind. um, and of course, that affects one mentally and so on. So for me, like, coffee was a big part of my life, and the frequency of coffee kind of attracts you to other people that had strong frequency of coffee in their nervous system, because the nervous systems connect. And so this is exactly what's happening also with certain parts of the elite. They want to smell the coffee, okay? And that's something I saw also another channeler say. I think it was Light. Said somebody seems like they want to be able to smell the coffee. Like they want to be able to smell the coffee, they need to be in the vicinity. To be in the vicinity, they can't be doing those satanic ritual abuse society thingy. And but they still want to smell the coffee. You think about the senses. This is Taurus. And so they reach through psychically attacking someone, or okay, and then there are all kinds of connections that are and experiences that are created there, um, that are kind of really weird to bring to the context of physical people, especially when a part of the trajectory is to cover up for that reality that to exist to begin with. So you can say this person is not normal, they need therapy. That thinning of the veil um, creates a certain interface, and it's kind of like the spiritual journey of the colonialist timelines, where they already find that it's not economic to colonize, and not only that, there's something in that seeming innocence, and it is innocence because people that did not grow up into overall satanic ritual abuse realities in that level of being, it is a certain innocence, and people might have their innocence awaken from that innocence because, or regaining their innocence by being aware that there were ritual abuse. Okay, if I go back to the story of when I had an old money friend, I never heard the term old money. Again, attempts to sexually assault me when I see that. It's so stupid. And that person was being their inner child naturally. And then I began to say, hey, I also want to be an inner child. Not in the sense that they were, but to connect with my inner child. And I began to dedicate time to that. Slowly but surely, the people around me that also needed to connect their inner child had their own, it's like a domino. And some of them did dark rituals. And for me, it was like, but hey, that person was with me for like a decade. Yeah, they needed to connect to their inner child, and they did it through dark rituals, trying to take your inner child. And dark rituals entail satanic ritual abuse, which entail attempts to and or psychically and or not raping the child, or getting a person to regress to their child state and raping them, to try to traffic them, to try to this, to try to that. And so those trajectories is like a domino that falls, and people have to face up to the consequences of their actions, which they were not just told but shown that they can get away with, and only losers do otherwise. And this is the collision of the clash of civilizations. Because those trajectories begin to have en masse implications. When I talked about how Peter, watch my video, how Peter rings are being exposed. attempts to pollute my energy with something that is gas-like when I say that. Okay, that this is where the void demons, or something that is of a void energy, but not the void of creation, is people are being put, I don't know what they call it, a spiritual jail. Okay, so perhaps they can understand this is the facing consequences that they didn't think that they would face, and they try to push that consequence instead of saying, hey, I want to be able to be childlike and connect to my inner child and be safe. How do I do that, Mr. Spiritual Jail? Okay? That can be, and having their real anger at the thing that they want to have and stating their desire can begin to yield other trajectories that are not demonic possession or something that looks like demonic possession, energetically, frequency wise. And when they try to create a rapport and then bombard the person that's shining with those type of energies, or purge onto them their own type of energies, they are met with the repercussions on a really immediate level. Because that's not a behavior that can accommodate for life. And the people that were promised that they would live forever doing that, it's kind of like the bone marrow. They were duped. So one is forced to reckon with that is the original. They have encountered an original person. They're not fake, okay? They're not, the person is being psychically attacked, they're not fake. Which they know because they attacked their life. And so for some of them, in Hebrew there is a sentence, Hagonev miganav patur. So some of them may believe that they are attacking a person who has already stole that light from somebody else, and they're just like, okay, we'll take that light. They have encountered an original. But a lot of them know that they have encountered an original, which is why they try to target and play the long game, which try to get at the essence of that person, only to expose on a worldly scale what they're doing and have immediate repercussions. Think about it. A banker goes on the whistleblower and doesn't, and then somebody talks about currency, but what about currency? But the currency, what about the banking, and so on and so on. How do we have a currency that's actually working and is not, of ritual abuse and so on and so forth? And then they have an initiation around, hey, let's make a satanic abuse-free currency. Okay? Then the person who was vibing with that, well, like, hey, that's really cool. Hey, they're really entrepreneurial and so on and so on forth. And that person, let's say, doesn't have food. So they say, I'm going to go to every business. I'm going to say, hey, we have an initiative to have a satanic ritual abuse-free currency. Would you invest in that? While we're working on that initiative, if you could fund as much as my, something to eat for me today, that would be fantastic. And also, let's keep in touch. And thinking about, hey, I eat 3 meals a day. If I let 3 places know that we're doing a satanic ritual abuse free currency, then I market that idea. Then more and more people have this in their brain. And then if they donate me food, then they basically are invested in that currency. And I've created a move, I dream with action in that way, okay? And if somebody get really mad, because they were only trying, or because they were trying to appeal to somebody's energy, and okay, and use that, or they were working also with the dark forces and they were wanting to sacrifice that person and so on. Now, with that person, like, why people be mad at me? I take action, I spread the news. I don't take credit for the idea. I just like, I talked about currency. Somebody said, hey, let's do that. Think about Clippy. How many people turned their profile picture into Clippy? Okay, Clippy ain't mad at that. But what if there was somebody who would post a Clippy and say, hey, we have this Clippy thing, Clippy that, and he wouldn't ask people to turn the profile picture into Clippy. And if people say, would add a Clippy to their profile picture and say, hey, I'm with Clippy. And they would have another idea and another idea and another idea. Now, when it comes to stuff like currency, that's supposed to be representative. So every person is supposed to have a voice in that. It's not like a film directing. And so what happens is the attempts to siphon the energy. Now, what happens? That's going to be exposed for various reasons, whether it's from within the treason cult, or whether it's people that actually come to shield and come to assist, um, or whether it is the people that are targeted or attacked begin to stand in their light. And sometimes people can create stuff together. Now, if those stuff is good, then nice things can happen. Okay, like when I created my Algol talisman with Beta Per Se and Uranus, there was another energy coming in, and then I heard, oh, don't let that energy interfere in what you do. And I didn't know how to apply that because I didn't like it. It's just because I'm Pisces, okay. And so when I ended up using the talisman, I got the two lizards, and whenever there was like psychic attack, which was sexual assault, I used that talisman. And I used that talisman also to negate the trafficking to do with real estate. And there would be a lot of traffickers that would feel the very weird things, and I would see things start to shake, things start to shake. Then suddenly I see, what when you work with that, we like shake it. We're like, that's against human traffickers. Are you human traffickers? And they were. So and then they would try to steal certain talismans from me. So that was one journey, and on a collective level, a lot of you can relate because that just begins to expose. This is a part of the Dark Ages where everything comes to the surface and the veil is thinning, and then there are the strange attractors that are bringing in the Golden Ages and connect with the Golden Ages. And this would be the energy of something like, hey, even if somebody, let's say, I don't know, interfered with the energy of like this talisman, I use that talisman to negate certain psychic attacks, okay? And they try, and when they try to manipulate that, they further expose what their methods are, and they would